Thank you everybody so much for joining today's live webinar. We are partnered with Hubly. So excited to be presenting the automation to you that we have through Hubly, as well as the integration with Wealthbox. And really what we're talking about at a high level is the intersection of CRM and what your overall practice management looks like in your operating system. So that being said, today what we're going to be covering is the Wealthbox demo. We'll do a very quick demo of Wealthbox, really just talking about the dashboard and what an individual record looks like for anybody who's not familiar with our system. And then we'll pass it over to Hubly, where they'll go through more of a detailed integration demo, as well as show you the Hubly product for anybody who's not familiar, so you can see what that looks like. And then we'll really leave a little bit of time at the end for Q&A. So if you do have any questions that pop up throughout the presentation, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A, and we'll make sure to cover all of them towards the end of the presentation. So my name's Jenna Gabati. I'll be presenting today on the Wealthbox side. I'm a product specialist here at Wealthbox. A little bit of background about me is I got my start as a financial advisor, did that for about 5 years, made a transition into fintech, and I saw a real gap in the marketplace for some modern tech tools. So I was really excited to join Wealthbox in their mission to make sure that every CRM system for financial advisors is as modern as possible, and that they're able to spend more time at the end of the day with their clients and in a client-facing position rather than in their tech. We will pass it over to Louis, who is the CEO and co-founder of Hubly, for him to introduce himself.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jenna. For those that haven't met me yet, my name is Louis Retief. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Hubly. Little background on myself. I was actually born in South Africa, but immigrated to Canada. I got my start in technology by actually working right away into fintech. I worked for a company called Wealthsimple up in Canada, and I was part of their team that actually helped launch their Wealthsimple for Advisors business up in Canada, which is very similar to Betterment for Advisors down in the States. And that's when I started really falling in love with wealth management tech. And got really passionate about how can we power financial advisors and their teams to help service more clients. And that's my little background on how I got into the space.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Louis. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started with a quick overview of Wealthbox. So once you log into Wealthbox, whether you've started your 30-day free trial, which you can do right from our website, or you've actually started your subscription, this is what you'll see when you log in. So this is your dashboard. And to give you the lay of the land here, we're logged in under the firm name ABC Financial. So that's where your firm name would appear. And under the advisor profile, Brad Creedon. On the left-hand side is your main navigation panel. It's what allows you to click through the different components of Wealthbox, as well as recently viewed pages towards the bottom. So that way you can just navigate back into anything that you'd previously clicked through. On the right-hand side is any activity that is either due for you, that's upcoming. It gives you a quick snapshot of what your day-to-day looks like, and that updates on a daily basis. And in the middle column here is probably the most unique feature and one of the most loved features of Wealthbox. It is the publisher tool and the activity stream. The publisher tool allows you to add new notes. You can create new contacts, new tasks, new events, and new opportunities, all directly from the dashboard without having to click through that specific component of Wealthbox. So as an example, to show you how it works, let's say that we had a client call in and we had a conversation with them maybe about their IRA. And so we want to leave a quick note on their contact record that that conversation took place. So we'll say we spoke to, and then this is where you're able to @mention your client. So by typing the @ symbol and starting to type out your client's name, you'll see a drop-down menu appear. We'll go ahead and click on the client that this is referring to. So in this case, Delilah Jones, and we'll finish typing out our note. For our purposes today, we'll just keep it very simple, but of course you can add as many details as you would like, and really furnish that note with all of the call details. Once you post that note, it will cascade down into the activity stream so that you can see a note related to Delilah added by you, the advisor, Brad Creedon. Now, what happened when you @mentioned your client is that note was left in 2 different places within your CRM system. First and foremost, that note was left on Delilah Jones's individual contact record. So if you clicked into her record, you would be able to see that note on her account with a timestamp of when it was left. It also flowed through automatically to the Jones household record that she's affiliated with. So with 2 very simple clicks, just clicking into the note and clicking post, that note was left in each place that it needed to exist within your CRM system without having to manually duplicate those efforts. So it really does save you a lot of time and energy when you're able to add activity directly from the dashboard. You can mention your client, and then that note goes to each place that it needs to be in your CRM. So if we click on Delilah's information, you'll see this slide out view appear, but let's take a look at what her individual record looks like. So at the top, you have her name, where she works, the fact that she belongs to the Jones household. So in this case, Kevin and Delilah Jones. You can see tags associated with this client. And we'll kind of review the functionality of tags, especially as it pertains to our Hubly integration a little bit later. You do have the phone numbers and email addresses with a click to call feature. So you can dial out to your client using your cell phone, landline, office phone, any number you normally use to reach out to your clients. You can also email directly from within Wealthbox, and that's going to be synced with your Outlook or your Gmail account. On the right-hand side is all of the activity that is specific to this client, as well as contact details where you can store your basic demographic information, really anything that you would want to keep track of for your client, as well as any custom fields that you've created. Now, custom fields are creatable as fillable fields, drop-down menus, checkboxes, dates, really any way that you would need to store that data. And that way you can make sure to track anything that's really important to you, even if it's not a standard or already pre-built field in Wealthbox. This is also where you can see family members that exist within that same household, as well as other types of relationships that you want to keep track of. So whether it's business relationships like CPAs or estate attorneys, or things like referrals, friends, or even family members that are a little bit more distant, you can keep track of those bi-directional relationships. The middle column here is the activity stream that is specific to this client, which you can always filter by type of activity or by the person that left activity on that record. So if you do want to see any activity that was left maybe by your administrative assistant or by an operations or compliance professional, that way you can filter that down as needed. The email integration also pulls a list of all the messages sent between you and whatever email addresses you have on file for your client. And that way you have a really clear communication log and you don't have to go searching through your general inbox for those messages. This is where you'll find a lot of custodial integrations, planning tools, reporting tools, but we can get into that maybe in a later webinar type of date, or if you're interested in more of a one-on-one demo, we can definitely dive into what your tech stack specifically looks like. But at a high level, this is going to be the main components of Wealthbox. We do have some other features that we're happy to cover, but let's kick it off and give it over to Hubly to talk about what their platform looks like, as well as show you why it's really cool to be integrated with Wealthbox.
Awesome. Thank you for that quick Wealthbox demo. It's very relevant to Hubly, and I'll be able to show quite a bit about how our integration will be able to leverage a lot of that data that is in the client record. For the rest of the webinar here, I'm going to quickly spend about 3 minutes just giving everyone a quick overview of Hubly and a little bit of background. But then for the rest of the time, we're going to dive into it and spend most of the time doing a live demonstration for everyone. So everyone knows how Hubly works, you know, how our workflow functionality works. And from there, we'll leave quite a little for Q&A at the end. And so please feel free to ask questions throughout. Little background on Hubly for those that have not heard about Hubly beforehand. So we launched just over 2 years ago in July 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. And we launched with the simple purpose of building a platform for financial advisors and their teams that's going to help you scale your services to more clients. What we found is that a lot of advisors were trying to use industry agnostic workflow or project management tools like Trello or Asana or Monday.com to help them manage their complex services and tasks that they had to complete for clients, or what we like to call workflows at Hubly. And so we decided to start building Hubly with the simple purpose of how do we help scale one of the most highly complex services that financial advisors and their teams provide to their clients. Since our launch at Hubly, we've now developed over 60 best practice workflow templates to help firms get started with workflows. We know one of the hardest things with workflow management is actually building them. And so the nice thing about working with Hubly is you very rarely need to build a workflow from scratch, and you can leverage our workflow templates when you get started. These workflow templates have been used over 120,000 times and have been completed to help service over 25,000 end clients. And so a lot of these workflows have been validated and are best practices. And so if you are struggling with workflows and trying to get them in place, Hubly is a great place to start because you don't have to build them from scratch, and you can use workflows that have been validated and tested to serve a lot of clients. More interestingly, though, what have we learned from helping advisory firms complete over 120,000 workflows? We found that most firms experience three core operational challenges that are impeding their ability to grow or scale. And those three core challenges are, first and foremost, how to standardize your new client onboarding experience. We often hear from advisors and their teams that clients are really tough to onboard. The process takes a lot of time. There's multiple people involved in each step of the process, from the initial consultation call that you do, data gathering, billing, account setup. And it's really tough to actually visualize where clients are left in the process, who's responsible next for the task, and to get a grasp of who's coming up and what to do next. And so Hubly's been used to really scale new client onboarding processes. We have case studies where we've helped advisory firms 10x their client onboarding capacity through using our best practices workflow templates that I will actually be showing in the demo. The second core operational challenge that we've heard advisory firms struggle with, which is really how to streamline your client review meetings. Most of the advisory firms we work with at Hubly are doing either surge meetings or are doing check-ins with their clients every quarter. And so if you are struggling to create a consistent review process for your clients where you have scheduling, preparation, and follow-up procedures to manage, Hubly's great at helping standardize those processes and increasing the efficiency of how you deal with a high volume of meetings. And last but not least, a lot of firms struggle with what we call building a more robust back office. This is really thinking about those operational components of making sure your clients are successful. These are your money movement workflows like account transfers, account opening procedures, trade requests, contributions, disbursements, tracking things like beneficiary updates, address changes, bank account updates. These are all service requests that, generally speaking, your operations or administrative team needs to handle, and they need to triage these at a high volume. And so if you're struggling with figuring out how do we streamline the administrative components of servicing our clients, and how do we make those more efficient so we can continue to onboard more clients without stressing about the ongoing proactive service of those clients, Hubly will be able to help with that. And so I'm sure, hearing some of those operational challenges have struck a nerve with you. And that's really why we built Hubly, is we're really trying to revolutionize practice management for financial advisory firms by bringing efficient process management, easy client tracking, and team collaboration all into a single workplace that integrates directly with your CRM. Now, a lot of people ask about our integration with Wealthbox and exactly how it works. And so I put up this little picture here, which I think explains it pretty well. The way to think about your tech stack is Wealthbox is the core of your technology stack. It's the piece of software that integrates with all the other tech providers that you use. Think about Hubly sitting on top of Wealthbox. We have what's called a bidirectional API integration with your CRM. What that basically means is you never have to rekey client data between Hubly and Wealthbox. If a client exists in Wealthbox, that client will exist in Hubly. We sync a lot of data fields between the systems, and we keep them always up to sync because, once again, we believe that Wealthbox is the core contact record database for your firm. And so we'll sync in client contact information from Wealthbox, household information, those important client dates that Jenna went through. We'll sync in your tag groups. And our goal is to visualize your workflows and processes for your firms and to make your CRM data more actionable. And I'll actually walk through how we do this right in the demo. And so, enough talking, let's actually just dive into it and do a live demo. I'm just going to stop my screen share here quick and reshare a live demo of Hubly. This is Hubly. Everyone should be seeing a somewhat blank white screen on their end. That is intentional. Once again, we integrate directly with Wealthbox. So all of your contact records, once you do the API sync with Hubly, which is basically instantaneous, are available in Hubly. You can also create a new client in Hubly, and that client will actually be created in the CRM. Once again, we have a bi-directional API sync. We also sync in your tags directly from Wealthbox, and so those are available in Hubly. You can create a new tag in Hubly, and that tag will exist in the CRM. Now, as I touched on earlier, most of our advisory firms that get started with Hubly get started with our best practice workflow templates. And there's a couple of key categories of workflow templates that are used most often. It's our workflow templates for your client onboarding process, our workflow templates for your investment management and money movement workflows, client meetings and reviews, etc. And so what Hubly looks like when you start adopting our workflow templates is you're essentially going to start building dashboards for your business, or at Hubly, what we call our views. And with a click of a button, you can, for example, open up your new client onboarding process. Now, what you're seeing in front of you here is that each of these columns is at Hubly what we refer to as a workflow. And generally speaking, these are the 6 workflows that make up a best practice new client onboarding process. You have your lead or referral workflow where new people are coming in. You have that introductory call, new client consultation, signing, billing, and document collection. What you're seeing here, Amanda, Ben, Connor, these are clients that are part of that workflow. And so, as an advisory team, this is something that's very powerful to use at your Monday meetings as a team. Here you can see who on the team is assigned to which client. You can see upcoming reminders, and you can see the individual progress that clients are making through a process all at a glance. And how you really start working in Hubly on a day-to-day is, for example, you can see Amanda Brown is scheduled in for an introductory call. And you can see there's an overdue reminder for Francis on the team to send the client the questionnaire before the meeting. What Francis is going to do is he's going to open up and click on Amanda. And this is going to open up at Hubly what we call the client card. The client card really tries to centralize a lot of the information from your CRM so that you and your team can easily collaborate on a client profile. And so I'm just going to walk you through the client card here. At the top left, we sync in all of your household information directly from Wealthbox. Here you can see all of those household records that are in the CRM. At the top here is just a free notes field where a lot of our advisory teams will keep track of client goals, kids' names, dog names, etc. On the right side here is once again where we sync in a lot of your CRM data. We have your contact information. We sync in your important client dates, birthdays, anniversary, privacy, fee agreements. And in the middle here is where you can see that current active workflow for Amanda. And this is where Francis can see my next task is to send the client the questionnaire before the meeting. Francis can also see there's some task details, and if Francis forgets how to complete this task, he can access the instructions that he needs to log into Precise FP and needs to send the Precise FP form. As soon as Francis has done that, he can mark the task complete. Marking the task complete updates the progress bar, and we audit and date stamp every task that has been completed. And let's just say, for example, Francis is going to go through here. He's going to finish the introductory call. There's a task here to add meeting notes. Francis can access the template for the meeting notes. He can copy that template, and he can go down to Hubly's notes section that integrates directly with Wealthbox. We discussed X, Y, Z. He's getting married. Whatever notes there might be added can be added directly in here, and those sync in with your CRM as well. Let's say Francis goes ahead and completes the meeting, and he goes and sends the follow-up email. That workflow is technically complete. But one of the things we found with, industry agnostic workflow tools is that financial advice is very customizable to a client. And sometimes clients fall off the track. You can at any time customize a workflow for a specific client. And let's say, for example, you need someone on the team to call Amanda to discuss any details about their introductory call. Let's say, Debbie, please call Amanda to discuss details. You can assign this task to Debbie on the team, set a reminder for later today, and go ahead and customize or update that workflow for Amanda. And let's just go ahead and let's say Debbie finished that task. You can then go ahead and mark the workflow complete and move Amanda along the process. Amanda is now in initial consultation meeting, or you can see Amanda has moved along the process. Now, more importantly, if we open up Wealthbox, we have a single sign-on right here to Wealthbox. You can see what has synced back into the CRM. With a click of a button, you can open up Amanda's profile. And you can see instantaneously that note has been added for Amanda. And we add an additional compliance record for when a workflow has been completed in Hubly, which once again will appear on your dashboard in Wealthbox because it is part of the client record here. At any time, you can toggle back to Hubly, and you can access that same workflow ledger and history by clicking this drop down here. You can see all historically completed workflows for a client, and you can quickly toggle back and you can see, for example, we did an employee benefits review for Amanda at a later date or a previous date. Just going to take a second here to look at some of the questions and answer them throughout. So we got a question from Clark. Wealthbox, our workflow tasks do not appear in the Wealthbox dashboard today. And so you would need to access those tasks in Hubly. The way you have your task list in Hubly is you can either access it from a dashboard, or you can find your individual tasks for each user in what we call the Hub feed. And so here I can quickly toggle towards Amanda, and I can see there's a task here to send Ben Jackson that formalized proposal, which is also the same task that appears here on the dashboard. We got a question from Clark regarding working from both UIs. That's a great question, Clark. We generally find that for more of your complex workflows and processes where there's multiple steps and procedures, you are accessing Hubly to figure out where things are in the process. Now, if you need information regarding your client's accounts, more detailed history regarding them, you are accessing that via Wealthbox. We have firms accessing that information from different ways, but sometimes you don't need all that detailed information and you just need to work on the projects and processes for a client. And so you generally end up living a little bit more in Hubly, or at least starting your day in Hubly. Now, I'm going to walk through a couple of our other powerful templates in Hubly. This is our onboarding process templates, and some of our other ones that are used very commonly is our investment management and new accounts dashboard. This is commonly used for managing, obviously, client assets. You have your new account opening paperwork, incoming assets or transfers, trade requests, cash disbursements. And this is something that the investment teams at firms often use to figure out where are the money movements at and how can we make sure that those get over the line. Now, I got a question from anonymous attendee regarding due dates and reminders, and I got a question regarding automations as well in there. And so I'm going to address this by showing you how we make some of your Wealthbox data more actionable. What I'm going to do here is actually open up a very classic example, which is our RMD workflow. And we have Amanda in this workflow. Now, RMDs are a big part of what you do in your day-to-day. Now, the big problem with RMDs is that we generally find is that you have to run a report to figure out which clients are turning 72 and a half so you can start the RMD process. Now, how Hubly is going to make Wealthbox data actionable is when you actually create a workflow, and all I did there is to edit the workflow is to double click on it. Here you can see the default tasks that are part of that workflow, but you can also set up what we call an automation rule in Hubly. Now, we have many types of automation rules, but to make your Wealthbox data more actionable is you can create at Hubly what we call an age-based rule. Now, what an age-based rule is we can basically monitor your clients' ages. And so you can create a rule that says, I want to look for all of my clients that have my RMD tag in my CRM, and I want them added into this workflow 1 month before, for example, their 72nd birthday. And so Hubly is going to monitor all of your clients' birthdays, and you no longer need to run a Wealthbox report to figure out the list of clients. We actually just make that data that's in your CRM very actionable. And once that rule is created, it's going to go ahead and monitor your clients' ages, and those clients will just be automatically scheduled into the workflow. And so when a client turns 72, let's just assume Mia turned 72, you'd wake up in the morning and Mia would be added into this workflow, just like that. So I hope that answered the question regarding automations. Let's work through a couple of other questions. Always easier to answer use case based. We got a question from Larry. Please discuss how our solo advisor no team uses Hubly. Are there solo advisors using Hubly today? Larry, this is a great question. Generally, we find that Hubly is the most powerful for teams. If you're a solo advisor who is really looking to push the boundaries of what servicing capacity you can hit as a solo advisor, those are the solo advisors we end up working with. Individuals that are trying to serve 75 to 100 clients by themselves. At some point, it just becomes very difficult to keep track of everything, especially your ongoing services to clients. And so those are the solo advisors we work with. If you're a solo advisor just running a lifestyle business, servicing 20 to 30 clients, and you're not necessarily looking to grow or scale, I don't think Hubly makes a whole lot of sense for you. Generally speaking, the task and workflow functionality in your CRM is powerful enough, and we'd recommend sticking with that. Got a good question here from Brian. Does Hubly sync with Zapier? Yes, Brian. So we do sync with Zapier. With our integration with Zapier, there's a couple of powerful automations you can set up. For example, I'll touch on a couple of common ones. One of the most common Zapier automations that a lot of our firms set up is most of the firms we work with have a scheduling link on their website using Calendly or Schedule Once for clients to schedule an introductory call. You can set up a Zapier automation that automatically adds a client into the workflow. So client schedules introductory call on website, that client is then automatically added into your introductory call workflow in Hubly. That's just one example of many Zapier automations that you can set up in Hubly. Would be happy to dive into those further, and we're just recommending schedule a call with our sales team or our website, and we can address some more use cases, but I just wanted to touch on one simple one for today. We got a question here from Rhonda regarding checklists available within Hubly. So Rhonda, there's a couple of ways I can answer that question. One is the task list that individuals live out of is what's called the Hub feed. So here you can see all of the outstanding tasks that you have been assigned across all of the firm's workflows. And that's generally used as your checklist for outstanding to-dos for when you're starting your day. Just going to read through a couple other questions. We got one from Natalie. Can you use those subtasks for specific time frames? Need to be set manually. Not sure. One sec. Let me just try to understand that. Good question, Natalie. So how our reminders work in Hubly is, let's take the consultation meeting here, for example. So all I did there is I opened up the workflow template to edit it. Now, how the reminders work in Hubly is you create them when you build the workflow. And so, for example, the first task here in the workflow template is to send client meeting reminder. The reminder that has been set up here for Debbie is that Debbie, when the client is added to the workflow, set reminder after 2 days. And so what that means is when a client is added into the workflow, then Debbie will be reminded 2 days after the fact to do the task. Now, the second reminder here is what's called in Hubly a sequential reminder. And it's a reminder that's activated when a preceding task is completed. So for example, after that meeting reminder is sent, there's going to be an additional reminder activated for Debbie to add the meeting notes 1 day after that. And so how that works is we're just going to go ahead here and add a new client into the workflow. We'll add Mia in here. Now, when Mia was added into the workflow, you can see that there was a reminder activated for Debbie. That reminder has also been added into Debbie's Hub feed. And as soon as Debbie finishes that task, it automatically activated the second reminder in the workflow. And you can see there's a reminder now on August 11th to do the next task. So any workflows where work is switching hands between multiple people, those sequential reminders are very powerful, because you don't have to complete a task and then you have to Slack or team someone to do the next task. The workflow will automatically remind them that they're up next. We got a question here from Dana regarding the color dots at the top of each block. Great question. So Dana, these are called service streams right here at the top of the client card. They're generally used by our advisory firms as an additional higher level of categorization to help you remember who the client is. Is this an A, B, or C client? You know, what conversations are top of mind? Are we talking about insurance? Are we talking about tax prep? Are we currently looking at their RMDs? It's an additional level of categorization within Hubly that's just very visual and easy to see, but functions very similarly to tags in your CRM. We got a question here from Clark. Can you automate the actual email distribution, send of a message to either a client specific criteria? Clark, this is possible. It's a little bit complex though, and not easy to demo. And so I would recommend, if that's something you are looking to set up, schedule a call with our sales team. We can walk you through how to do that. And our workflow experts have done that and helped with many other firms to set those up. Great question though. Cool. I think I addressed a lot of the common questions there. Let me just give them one more review before I'll demo a couple other things. And then I'll open it up for Q&A again. We got a question from Benjamin, which I think is a very important question. Is what happens to all this data if, example, heaven forbid, Hubly were to stop working or go out of business, or the engagement with you would be terminated? Great question, Benjamin. So as I touched on earlier here, when you access a client record in Wealthbox, from the day you start using Hubly and complete a workflow or add a note for a client, we immediately sync that into your CRM. Once again, your CRM is your core compliance database. And so we make sure that all of those crucial milestones or workflows and notes you've added for a client are immediately in your CRM. And so there's an immediate backup of everything that is happening at Hubly. Now, in addition to that, I walked through this earlier. At Hubly, we have what's called the workflow ledger. Here are all the historically completed workflows for a specific client. Now, at any point in time, you can export this client record via a CSV. These CSVs are generally used by advisory firms when they get audited. And so they basically have a comprehensive list of every task workflow completed for every single client, all audit and date stamped. And so those are generally used for that. And so, if there's ever a future where Hubly were to go out of business, you can export all of your client data from the day you start using Hubly, and you can back up those records into your CRM. We got a question here from Audrey, just confirming the reminder is the task due date. Yes, correct, Audrey. We got a question from Colin, which I think is interesting. Can you summarize this as this is a process as a workflow for workflows? I get what you're trying to say there, Colin. So the way we think about it terminology-wise at Hubly, and the way it's a little bit different than how you probably think about workflows in your CRM, is at Hubly, we believe a process is made up of multiple workflows. And so if you think about your onboarding process, there's several distinct stages of when a client is going to be completing or going through. And so the goal of Hubly is to visualize the very distinct stages of new client onboarding. So you can easily get a pulse as to where clients are at in the process. And so the terminology used in Hubly is you create multiple workflows that make up, generally speaking, a process. And so we believe in micro workflows at Hubly, where a little bit different than your CRM, Wealthbox would have one long workflow for client onboarding. We actually believe in breaking that up into multiple workflows so you can easily visualize it using a dashboard. And that's why you see the client onboarding process look like this in Hubly. We got a question from Brian. Do completed tasks get synced into the Wealthbox profile? Brian, completed tasks do not get synced back into Wealthbox. Right now, it is only completed workflows. Awesome. I think I've addressed a lot of the main questions there. Now, I wanted to show one more core piece here of Hubly that before I'll open it up to Q&A. And so I'm just going to toggle here to our client meetings and reviews best practices dashboard. Now, a lot of firms we work with, as I mentioned, do surge meetings or highly complicated, high volume meeting processes. And one of the most difficult things to do is when you're scheduling future meetings is remembering when's the last time you met with a client. And so Hubly makes this all a lot easier. We're just going to open up DJ McGee's client profile here. Now, if you're using a scheduling system like Calendly or Schedule Once, we have a Zapier integration that can pull in all of your meeting dates. And so you can actually see all of your upcoming meetings and historical meetings for a client directly in Hubly. Most firms we work with use scheduling software because it's the most efficient way to schedule, plus the easy way to capture very succinct data. Now, what Hubly can do is we can actually monitor your past meeting dates and remind you when it's been 3 or 6 months since you met with a client. And so in the scheduling workflow, you can set up what we call an automation rule. And you can set up what we call an important client date rule. And let's say for all of your 8 clients, you meet with them quarterly. So let's say for all of my 8 clients, I want to meet with them every 3 months after their last meeting date. And when you set up this automation rule, Hubly is going to monitor all of your past meeting dates and just automatically put them in the scheduling workflow that, hey, it's now time to schedule the next meeting with the client. And so that's a very common automation rule that's set up to help you stay on top of your client meetings. Now, the second automation rule that commonly gets set up to help streamline your client meeting management is in the preparation workflow. With DJ McGee, once again, you can see that his next meeting is scheduled for August 11th. Now, generally speaking, when the next client meeting is scheduled, you don't want to start the preparation process for that meeting until a week before that. And so in Hubly, we can set up another automation rule, once again, an important client date rule, that says I want all of my, once again, let's say, for example, A clients added 1 week before their next meeting. So this is another very intelligent automation that can be set up to help you be very proactive in how you and your team work on these complex processes together. And so those are 2 common automations that we set up with the firms we work with that are going to make it a lot more efficient. You don't have to no longer keep a really complex spreadsheet or Excel monitoring all your last contacts with a client. Hubly can do that all automatically for you. A couple of new questions that came in here. Let me just read them quick and I'll address them. Oh, we got a great question from Rhonda. So Rhonda, great question. If we once again pop into Rhonda's question is, when you complete a workflow, does it automatically move on to the next workflow? The answer is yes. So when you set up, for example, your lead or referral workflow, you can tell Hubly what is the next workflow that the client needs to move on to. In this case, I want the client to move on to the introductory call workflow. And so if we use that example, Rhonda, we're going to go through here. We're going to go ahead and complete these tasks. Once the workflow is complete, you can then just move the client onto the next workflow. And they've automatically been added into new client 2 introductory call. So we got a great question here from Audrey. How do you address workflows that tend to have a lot of back and forth communication? Hubly is really great for this. And I'll explain how. For example, Audrey said, when opening up an account, we task our CSA, then we keep us posted on the status, back and forth communication with the custodian, need information from the client, address mismatches, etc. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to open up our new account opening paperwork workflow. And so, Audrey, when you set up the workflow, there's a couple of things that you need to do. First off, when creating the workflow, you're going to assign specific steps of that workflow to a team member or to a role. You can assign it to Debbie or, for example, a CSA. And so that means when that workflow is activated, that individual on the team will be automatically delegated those tasks. And so, for example, here we set up a reminder for Debbie to fill out the paperwork, upload it, and send the paperwork to the client. You then have a task for Francis to follow up with the client. You would then set up a reminder that when the paperwork is sent to the client, you want Francis to automatically follow up 3 days afterwards. You can also, in Hubly, say when a task is for a client. So here, client signed paperwork. This is actually what we call a client task. And then once again, submit paperwork to TDA, for example, and confirm the account has been opened. Here, we probably set up another sequential reminder to follow up if paperwork has been completed, let's say after 5 days. So once that workflow is created, I'm just going to go ahead here and add a new client into the workflow to show you what happens. As you can see, Amanda here was added into the workflow. There was an immediate reminder for Debbie to fill out the paperwork. Debbie's going to go in here. She's going to mark it complete. She's going to say she finished, upload the paperwork, and she's going to send the paperwork to the client. As soon as Debbie marked that task complete, Francis, the advisor, is next up in the workflow. Francis has automatically received a reminder to follow up with the client. That reminder can be found in Francis's Hub feed. So we toggle to Francis's Hub feed. You can see right here at the bottom, follow up with client Amanda Brown has been added into his Hub feed. And so that's how you really collaborate with back and forth communication. Now, let's say Francis followed up with the client. The next thing that's really tough to monitor is, have the clients completed their tasks? And so in this workflow here, you can see that the next task is a responsibility for the client. And at any time, you can use Hubly's filters to quickly filter by status on workflows that are waiting on client. And with a click of a button there, you can see, oh, here are the workflows where the next task is actually waiting on the client. And it's an easy way for the team to all know, okay, we need to remind Amanda to sign. Let's say Amanda signs the paperwork, it's submitted to TDA. It once again automatically activated that follow-up reminder to confirm that the account has been opened. That reminder has been added here, and that reminder was assigned to Debbie, which is now in Debbie's Hub feed as well. We got a great question here from Andrew. When adding a comment to a task in Hubly, it adds it as a note without any context or reference to the actual workflow in Wealthbox. Andrew, that's a great question. Let me just open up an example here. So you're 100% right. In Hubly, you can associate a note with a task. And so at any time, if you're in a Hubly workflow, you can quickly toggle to that note. However, when that note syncs back into Wealthbox, we do not associate it with the task or the workflow. That's not something we're able to do with the API today. Hopefully, we can make that change in the future. It's something we would love to do. We got a great question here from Natalie. Is there a view where you can see your own overview dashboard as a user or just a reminder list in the Hub feed? Natalie, it's a great question. So instead of using the dashboards, you can instead ask Hubly for help. So you can also go, Hubly, show me all my active workflows in the entire firm. This firm has 47 active workflows. You can then use our filters to say, well, I only want to see what Debbie, let's say myself, Debbie is responsible for. And I only want to see reminders, let's say, for example, due this week. Hubly's going to filter all that data for you, and you're going to get a list of the 3 workflows that you have a responsibility for. You can also create your own personal view or dashboard with those filters. And so we can go ahead and call this Debbie's view. As an example for you. Awesome. We got a couple other questions here rolling in. And I know we're getting close to time. So Jenna, please let me know on timing here.
Yeah, we're a little bit over time, so maybe we'll do like one more pass through and see if there's any really pertinent questions, and then the rest we'll follow up with anybody who didn't get their question answered offline.
Sounds like a plan. I will answer Colin's last question here because I think it's the only one we haven't touched on yet. Colin asked, can tasks be assigned to a team? Yes, Colin. You can create in Hubly what's called a service team for a client. And so instead of assigning an individual user to a task, you can assign a role to a task. And let's say, for example, the CSAs are always responsible for this task. And then that's the CSA for that advisor is, let's say, Debbie. She would then be assigned a task. Jenna, I'll pass it back over to you and just say thank you, everyone. There was a lot of questions. Sorry if we couldn't get to your question. If you want to find out more about Hubly, please visit our website and schedule a call with our team directly. Thanks so much.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. And one thing I want to just attest to is Hubly has a fantastic team and they're very hands-on with how they help you. So if you are interested, I would highly recommend just contacting them because they can help you build out those personalized workflows, especially because we know how personal these onboarding processes and just your overall business processes are to your firm. So definitely check them out. If you do want to follow up with either one of our companies on our side, you can just contact sales@wealthbox.com. And on the Hubly side, it would be hello@myhubly.com. So again, apologize if we didn't get to your question, but we had a ton of fantastic questions come in. So very grateful that you all took the time to learn more about our integration and our two different systems and how we communicate. With that being said, thanks so much, Louis. Really appreciate it.